we're going to start off with a tale, a journey. And I want you to visualize back when you were in high school. So there was a time where I maxed out bench press 1,500 days in a row. That was my high school. So it wasn't necessarily because our coaches didn't tell us what to do. It's because we didn't have any direction in the weight room. It was an interesting time. So I grew up in Katy, Texas, so a small town west of Houston. We had two high schools growing up, and to paint the picture, football was life. If you've seen the movie Friday Night Lights, it's very representative of the lifestyle that I had growing up. If you've seen the TV show Friday Night Lights, it's nothing like that. High school is not that dramatic, trust me. But we had coaches that wanted us to succeed, but we would continuously get our butts kicked, right? Because we were working out, but it wasn't means towards an end. It was just movement. Deadlifts were banned from our weight room because years ahead of me, a kid dislocated a slipped disc, so deadlifts were out. I didn't deadlift until I was 24 years old. Crazy. So we had the weight room, but we did not have the instruction, the guidance from the coaches. Also, I had a lot very transactional coaches. They cared more about keeping their job. They were scared of their job versus developing their athletes. A very pivotal moment in my athletic career, my linebackers coach said, you work hard on the field, you work hard in the weight room, but you're just not any good. They decided to neglect my whole junior class, take the sophomores up, put them on varsity, forget those seniors, forget us juniors, and we're going to invest in 2 years later just so they could keep their jobs a little bit longer, keep the boosters happy, the fundraisers happy, give them hope. But they neglected us as athletes. I'll tell you this, we did not go silently. 10 of us from that junior year, we started our own lacrosse team in Texas, in a small town in Texas. But 5 of the 10 of us went on to go play college ball. We were athletes, we were leaders, but we were winners. I did not want a coach to decide based off his interpretation of my potential, my performance. From there, I shot up to Marymount University, Division III. My interpretation of college athletics was only small college football or UT when I had friends that go on and play there. I assumed a lot. I assumed you had a weight room. I assumed you got a strength coach. I assumed that other athletes were working just as hard as I was to lift weights and want to win. But weightlifting is not associated with the sport of lacrosse. This is 15 years ago. 15 years ago, weightlifting not associated with the sport of lacrosse. So I walk into Marymount's fitness center, not a weight room. Fortunate for me, the assistant coach, he also assistant coached at high schools just to make ends meet. So we were able to find a squat rack to get donated to Marymount, and that was the first squat rack at Marymount University. I didn't know much. I didn't have a coach, so I reached out to my buddies at Texas and asked them for a program. This was the 2005 Vince Young National Championship. So I took on this program. I was doing everything that VY was doing, except I was a 5'7" genetic trash can from Katy, Texas, not Vince Young. So I was misapplying that program, but I didn't know any better. I was having a lot of volume. All I knew growing up, right, lift weights, run as fast as you can, and play your sport. I continued that because that's the only thing I knew. I wanted to succeed. I wanted to win. And I'll tell you, it was a fun 4 years at Marymount, but I had a lot of moments in which I was outrun, overpowered, despite of all the work that I was putting in, right? I was still working hard in the weight room. I was still working hard in the field, but it wasn't transferring to my performance. I had a lot of questions, but I didn't have anyone to answer. Unfortunately, my career ended before I got to answer any of those questions. But that really inspired me to become a high-quality strength coach, sport coach, just a coach in general. All right, I'll kick this off. All right, we're going to talk about programming for the novice athlete. I'm going to introduce the concept of a life cycle of an athlete. From our perspective at Power Athlete, we have a novice athlete, a trained athlete, and a professional athlete. I'll get into the definitions of each of those as we progress here. So Power Athlete, we are a worldwide strength and conditioning organization. We are focused on empowering your performance through unlocking athletic potential. That could be nutrition, it could be goal setting, it could be programs, it could be education as a coach. We're just focused on a performance-based training system. Our mission, empower your performance. To help you take your athletes where they can't take themselves. To help you take you where you can't take yourselves. Presentation objective. We're going to get into laying out a program to accelerate adaptation and then unlock athletic potential. You only have so much time with your athletes in the off-season. Really, 4 years to develop an athlete is not that long. So I'm going to talk about how to lay a foundation, accelerate adaptation, put them in a position where we can really have some fun training and not take away from their performance. Let's begin with athletic potential. I mentioned earlier my coaching career started as a sport coach. I worked so hard that I earned the respect of my former coaching staff to be a member of their team and get some free school out of it. Biggest challenge that I faced there was recruiting, right? I had to go out and recruit kids. I'd only played the sport for 6 years. I had to find out who had potential that we should invest this roster spot in over the next 4 years. I had no idea what to look for. At first, I was looking for just the ballers, but then you saw they weren't the best teammates. Then I was looking for the athletes, and then realized I was probably the best athlete on the team, but I was the worst player on the team. So I didn't know what to look for, and I was afraid that I was going to mislabel an athlete and take away a possibility and an opportunity for them. So enter the performance development model. So we have mental, skill, and athleticism. Skill is SPP. This is skill work. It's the sport. Sport coach own this. From a strength and conditioning perspective, sport coach is own this. This was the practice time or the wall ball drills that I gave my athletes to do on their own. But skill work specific. Then we have the mental aspect. I view mental as self-esteem, concentration, and managing fear under your experience. Then we have athleticism. So wise man once told me, when you put a Venn diagram in your presentation, you're going to look a lot smarter. So let's hope that works a little bit. But how a Venn diagram works, when one of these components is focused on, it enlarges. What happens to the center? It expands as well. But if I start to neglect one of these, whether it's skill work, whether it's my strength and conditioning training for athleticism, or the athlete working on their mental approach, their mental prep, that middle also shrinks. This is a great argument if you are fighting for minutes in the weight room from your sport coach. Bring this into it, because I want the objective to expand that bubble of athleticism, expand the middle, so I can accelerate my skill acquisition, put them in a better position. That's what I view athleticism in the weight room as. We're developing coordination, making more coachable athletes. So think of two perspectives when looking at this model. The first is going to be the athlete. I want that middle to represent performance. I want you to control the mental application, because you can take the mental into the weight room. You can take connecting skill work and position and posture on the field, things I need to do as a defensive or offensive player, and find connections within the weight room. Athleticism, expanding that bubble for expanding my performance, because I can hit mental, I can hit skill by focusing on athleticism. From a coach perspective, it's the outside looking in. This is how I want you to view potential. What is limiting them? Is it going to be skill work? I'm going to invest time in skill. Is it going to be athleticism? Are they amazingly skilled athletes? And trust me, in lacrosse, they're not weight room warriors. A lot of the kids that I had the opportunity to coach at higher levels, not weight room warriors, so there's a lot of potential there if we get them underneath the barbell. And mental. I want my athletes to know themselves, a true understanding of self-esteem. Not too high self-esteem, not too low self-esteem. They know exactly who they are when they step onto the field. In the weight room, the barbell, the stress that I can administer and create some learning opportunities, that's a great place to start. So this is what I took into recruiting and held on to as I progressed as a strength and conditioning coach. Let's get into athleticism. So this is the most overused word by sports announcers out there. Man, what an athletic play, right? But they don't necessarily know how to define it. Well, at Power Athlete, we defined athleticism in making it a trainable performance. So let's get into it. Our definition of athleticism, the ability to seamless and effortlessly combine primal movement patterns through space to accomplish a known or a novel task. We're going to walk through step by step. We're going to begin with our primal movements. Camera, follow me. I forgot my pelvis. Those of y'all that saw me speak earlier. Pelvis Presley. All right. So primal movement patterns. These are going to be the fundamental movement patterns, the foundational movements in all of sport, in all of human movement. We begin with our upper body. We get 4 for the upper body. We have a vertical push paired with a vertical pull. We have a horizontal push paired with a horizontal pull. Now for our lower, this is where the fun begins. You'll see when the slides back up, we're going to see a graph. You're going to see a bowl. That's going to represent our hips. Then you're going to see hips. These are going to represent our hips. Now imagine an x-axis of rotation going through the side of our pelvis that our pelvis is going to rotate upon. This is going to be our hinges, our squats, our front squats, our overhead squats, our deadlifts, our power cleans, our snatches. We may coach those movements differently, but I need you to understand when at the perspective of the hips, it's the same movement. Now we have a vertical axis of rotation coming down through the top of your head, through the bottom of your hips, and the pelvis is going to rotate along that. Y-axis. These are generalized as our lunges, right? I step forward, my pelvis rotates. Finally, now I have an axis of rotation coming straight through my belt buckle here, and then my pelvis is going to rotate. Iliac crests are going to lift right and left. That's going to be our step up, like we're marching, or we're sprinting, or jumping upstairs. So these are our foundational movements for us to build athleticism. I'm not going to focus on one X, but not teach my athletes how to lunge. I would create a deficiency by biasing one over the other. Yes, I can overload and really drive some structural adaptation with that X more than I can the Y, but I'm not going to neglect it in my athletes' training. These are our primal movements. Now we get into seamless and effortless. I think the best way to teach seamless and effortless is through the competency model. So found this in grad school and just so happened to make its way back into our definition of athleticism. We begin to teach athletes how to move, and we're going to be faced with unconscious incompetence by the athlete. This is where they don't know they're not doing something wrong, right? You give them a direction or cue, and they look back at you like, I didn't do that. Yes, you did. Why else would I be communicating? No. So they're on unconscious incompetence. Key there is they don't value the coaching. Why would they be talking back to you? So they haven't invested enough time or had enough opportunity to move or coach athlete connection yet. But more exposure, more reps, more opportunity, they gradually get into our conscious incompetence. That's when they say, hey, coach, I need to come watch this set. Hey, how's that rep? So you see they're invested, they're valuing it. It may not be perfect, but they're thinking about the posture, position, the execution of the movement. Then more reps, more opportunity, we get into conscious competence. Now we're seeing some consistency within the movements, within the Olympic lifts, right? Instead of just one good out of our set of 3, we have 3 good reps. The problem with this, though, it's slow. They're thinking about their foot position. They're thinking about full hip extension during the cleans. I don't want them thinking about that when it gets to the field. I have so much other things I need them to focus on. They need to hear the coach from the sideline. They need to be able to read the defense and then communicate the play. I don't want them thinking about full hip extension or stepping properly in the lunge or the first step off the ball. So the weight room becomes the opportunity, expose, opportunity to fail, provide some coaching feedback, gradually work until these movements become unconscious. It's just executed X, Y, Z. Perfect. Unconscious competence is going to be our goal, the purpose of that weight room, so they don't have to think about posture, position, execution, and it frees up their mind to read the field. Seamless and effortlessly. Through space. 3 planes of motion. I've been very fortunate to travel to 6 continents all over the world, 24 countries, and I can't tell you the lack of understanding of planes of motion, so we had to put through space and break it down in there. Sagittal plane, everything we can do in a squat rack and a door frame or sprinting straight ahead. Now we have our transverse plane. Think rotation, separation of shoulders from our hips. Fat guy in a little coat, right? Then we have our frontal plane. Jumping jacks, lateral steps, left and right. Stu McGill calls this the injury prevention plane, and I can't agree more. Do some side pillars and find out. I don't care if you're squatting 400. We're going to put you in a side pillar, and let's see how really strong you are. So find different ways to challenge your athletes through these 3 planes of motion. The one common thing that all sports have in common, all sports have in common is movement through space. Volleyball, basketball, lacrosse, football, even swimming. So we are training our athletes to move through all 3 planes of motion. X, Y, Z, action of axes of rotation for our hips. An infinite combination of X, Y, Z through all planes of motion. Think about a linebacker. Great example. How is he set up in his stance? This is going to be a hip hinge. What's his first step off the ball? Offensive lineman's coming to cut him. He's going to hurdle him and do a step up, then get back into his position and make that play. So I need to make sure my athletes can move the X, move the Y, move the Z, and then put them in a position to challenge the combination of these movements. That's athleticism. So how do we teach it? We break these into known and novel tasks. The best way to demonstrate known and novel tasks, I find, is closed loop versus open loop. Closed loop, this is with a set start and set finish. Think everything in training. That squat rack. I set, start, and set finish. I'm going to start with my hips open, my depth, and finish that movement. There's no external stimulus. I'm deciding when to go on that movement. I'm not reacting to a play, a whistle, a ball, or an opponent. And it's me versus me out on the Olympic platform. Examples, field goal kicking. That's a closed loop within this open loop sport. Golf, closed loop. There's no external stimulus. You could argue wind, but the athlete still decides when to set, start, finish. And it's them versus them, really. Now we have our open loop. This is sport. There is no set, start, and set finish, right? In training, I'm going to go run 60 meters with my soccer team, but then on the field, all right, my intent is 60 meters. We're going to sprint as hard as fast as we can that way. But then my teammate turned it over, made a bad pass, and that stops at 20, and I got to go the other direction. So no set, start, and finish. There is external stimulus everywhere. In my central nervous system has to process that and then tell my body what to do. So I need to get reps closed loop to be in a position to master them open looped in competition and game day. And most importantly, it's you versus the opponent. I can't stress this enough. Just because a guy can run a beautiful 5-10-5, how does he run that when he's got to mirror somebody or react to a different play or movement or field? So open loop is an amazing test for my training. Game day is a test, but I need to implement fun stuff like chase, tag, even spike ball, and it's amazing open loop. I don't know where that ball's going. I just hit it. I have no control of it. I don't know where it's going. It's a good open loop test for my athletes. How do they hit that ball? How did they step to react? Was there valgus within that step? Okay, we got to go back and focus on more lunge work, get those hamstrings involved. So it's a good test, and I don't have to wait till the practice, the preseason, where my athletes are judged by the sport coach. I need them to fail first. Open loop movements in training are your test before they have a real test. Especially if we're talking about military athletes. I can't afford them to go out into combat situations and not be ready in this stance. All right, so we talked about athleticism, now getting into athlete preparation. So everybody's got a pyramid, even us, Mel Sif, everybody's got a pyramid. So we're going to start from the ground up, right? We want to establish a fine base. So nutrition and recovery. We're going to educate our athletes and put them in their best position because we know the gut is the window to the immune system. It's where we can make the smallest adjustments, have the biggest impact, and then the immune system is going to help them recover from all the training and stress we're putting them under. So we're focusing on nutrition and recovery. That is everything. Then we progress up to the hierarchy of limiting factors. Bottom line, this is what my athletes can't do. We're going to find that and put them in a position. Going back to that Venn diagram, it could be skill. We're going to put them as a strength and conditioning coach in a better position to acquire that skill. Could be mental. I'm going to put them in stressful situations and then have a learning lesson. Big tires, water in the tires, all these different things, but I need to provide feedback, just like I would with a squat, with mental preparation or athleticism. This could be tight hips. As you see there, we put mobility, stability, and primal proficiency as the athleticism limiting factors that we focus on. As we progress up, we get into 3. So I want to get away from the hierarchy here because these are not, one is not more important than the other. First, we have body awareness, knowing where your body is through space. Having awareness of how your hips move, X, Y, and Z, through all 3 planes of motion. Conscious competence, that's where this comes into play with our body awareness. Then we progress into BB, that it's going to be barbell, and Olympic lifts. Barbell, that's going to be the safest way. We're going to squat, deadlift, as you see in our strength and conditioning program. We're going to squat, deadlift. We're going to just do basic primal movements with the barbell because it's the safest stress that we can apply to drive a structural adaptation. This is the keystone in developing our athlete. And we pair that up with Olympic weightlifting because strength sits on an island by itself without your ability to use it. We can teach our athletes Olympic weightlifting, this dynamic expression of the strength and the new meat suit, the new muscle that we give them in our barbell work. And finally, speed. In the world of sport, speed is king. It is the ultimate equalizer. We got some running backs playing in the NFL that are 5'6". They don't have to be big, strong, and a stereotypical, right, NFL player. I'm sure a couple of them were labeled with not enough potential, but they're there. Why? Because they are the fastest person on the field. It gives athletes that don't have the size, the attributes, the demands of the sport, an opportunity. So we are going to train fast and be fast. They exist through our squats, through our lunges, and as sure as sprints. Then we progress up to sport, right? This is where you have an impact with your athletes as a strength and conditioning coach. We do all the work in the off season, hand them off to the sport coach, and guess what happens? They screw it all up, right? We're going to take some time off. We're going to go run laps. Special teams do laps. We need to almost take that into consideration and put them in a position to survive their sport coach. All right, so our athlete preparation model, nothing revolutionary here. We identify the demands of the sport and the position, physical and mental. Then we assess the athlete, identify their current physical and mental attributes and any limiting factors. Again, mental, skill work, what does the coach need them to do this off season? They should have that conversation with you. So how far off are they as an athlete assessment to the demands? And we're going to start to bridge that gap as we develop a program, form a plan to empower those athletes' performance, which leads to preparedness. Best positions we can as we hand them off to their sport coach. All right, the novice athlete. So we define a novice athlete as an athlete that has not exhausted a linear progression and developed a base level of strength. Trained athlete, once we get there, then there's a lot of stuff that we can throw at them and they're ready. Right? Many of you have seen different parameters that are examples of this, like having a double bodyweight back squat before you do depth jumps. That's an example of establishing a base level of strength so you can do the fun stuff. All the athletes, we're not going to apply anything stupid because we're bored as coaches. That is selfish coaching, not empowering your athletes. So we need to establish a base level of strength, and I'm going to walk you through it. Specific limiting factors for a novice athlete. We're going to begin with biomechanical efficiency. This is when you approach an athlete and you're like teaching the deadlift, for example, and you say, all right, shoulders back. Then they get deeper in that position. You're like, no. Straighten out your knee, or straighten out your knees a little bit. And then they do one of these. They have a limited body and mind connection. That's biomechanical inefficiency. That's a limiting factor. I'm not going to have my athlete 1RM because they can't even control a coaching direction. Then we get into neuromuscular efficiency. This is going to be, I don't know my own strength. So in sport, the ball is thrown to a specific place, or the ball comes off the rim to a specific place. Not knowing my own strength is I miscalculate it, I overjump that pass, or I underjump that pass, or just take the wrong step, reaction. So I need to give my athlete opportunity, more reps, so they can jump to exactly where they need to on the field. Then we have psychological factors. This gets into, we have biological age, we have chronological age, and then we have mental age. Are they disrupting your weight room? Do they have the attitude, the ability to take constructive criticism and direction from you as a coach? So are they ready for training? Then we have tensile strength. This is reps on reps. I'm not going to put my athletes under 1RMs if they can't brace and protect themselves. Think of folding iron. Heat, forge, fold. Heat, forge, fold. I'm going to develop that over time. So you'll see how we get there, and then we establish our base level of strength. This is going to be the foundation for which athleticism is built. We get into the fun training, but we need to get to this point where athletes will suffer, they will get hurt, and not be prepared and take away from their opportunity on the field. So let's get into novice programming. We're going to begin with our bedrock program, and I'll walk you through exactly what to do, why we chose the rep schemes we did, and then how we're able to take advantage of that. The driving principles behind this program, said principle, specific adaptation to impose demands. We go back to it, we're going to train football, volleyball, all of our athletes the same because they all need to go into those biomechanical limiting factors, neurological limiting factors, and develop some tensile strength. Biology will take care of the rest in terms of how much girth they get and put on to the meat suit. All right, and accelerated adaptation. Again, I said we only get so much time with our athletes, so we need to maximize everything that we do. Some of us get 45 minutes once a week. Some of us get 30 minutes 4 times a week. How this is laid out right now, this is in an in-season and off-season program. If your off-season, A, is going to be Monday. If you're in season, A is the day after your game day. Our A day, we're going to begin with our intensity runs. We're going to run as fast as we can on fresh day in the off-season, and yes, run as fast as we can after a game. We're going to squat 3 sets of 5 reps, straight sets across. That doesn't include warm-ups. We pair that with a vertical press, 3 sets, 5 reps, straight sets across. Day 2, we're going to come in and we're going to get an absolute pull. So we're going to do deadlift, again, doesn't include warm-ups, 1 set, 5 reps. We pair that with a vertical pull, 3 sets of max. Finally, we're going to get into our primal Z. We're going to step up. So with our novice athletes, we're going to begin to overload the x-axis because it's the safest, bilateral hip hinge, but we're going to teach them how to move through the Z and the Y. So I'll go into the progressions there next. Wednesday, middle of the week, rest. Get out there and do some skill work. Skill guys, go run some passes. Bigs, go do pass pro. C, we're going to come back and we're going to squat 3 sets, 5 reps, and I'm going to add a total of 5 pounds to the bar. As we get into the progressions, ladies, we're going to cut all of our progressions in half. We're going to pair that with now a horizontal press. 3 sets of 5 reps, straight sets across. Pair that with a volume run. Get some condo, get some conditioning in there. Friday, or D, we're going to come in, see the rep change here. Power cleans, PC, power cleans. We're going to come do 5 sets of 3 reps. Still hitting our 15 reps that we want to drive our specific adaptations, but now we understand the limitations of the population we're working with and this complex lift. So what do rep 4 and 5 look like for a lot of athletes? They suck, even with the guys that have done it a lot. So we're just going to take that in consideration, still hit our 15 reps. We pair that now, chin-ups, 3 sets, max reps. And finally, primal Y. We want to lunge through space, not back and forth. No, I want to actively pull my body through space. Remember, we're training for athleticism. All right, week 1 walkthrough, I introduced that, but now specifically our runs. We give our athletes 2 types of runs. Again, these are high school athletes. We don't need to overcomplicate and make sprinting more difficult than it is in terms of programming. So I'm going to begin with introducing our volume runs because that's what a lot of us have experienced before. Volume runs is anything in a training day that's 8 to 12 reps. The distance is 60 to 120 yards. Remember, we're still sprinting, volume sprints. And the rest is set. 1 to 1, 1 to 2, 1 to 3. I have a set work to rest ratio. The purpose of our volume runs is going to be challenging a running technique under fatigue. We pair that, our distances are going to be set by 3 things. It's going to be how close am I to season, right? Then we have our position specifics or our sport specific. And then what does the coach want? I got to take that into consideration. Our intensity runs. Notice it says rep range, not set reps, rep range. Because I don't know how many reps I'm doing that day. I don't know how many reps each athlete is doing that day. But we're going to target 4 to 7 reps. The distances are our acceleration, our top-end speed that we're going to see on the field. It's not often that we can run in a straight line beyond 60 yards in competition. So I'm going to focus on those 10 to 60s. My bigs are closer to 10. My middies, my cornerbacks are closer to 60 in this. And our rest as needed. How does that work for you? It's going to be a stopwatch. Old school application that I did, we're going to set our, on the goal line, our skills, then our big skills on the 80, and then our bigs on the 60. We're all going to run towards the goal line, walk back as needed, and I'm going to work through that. If I count loud, 5, 8, 7, 6, whatever the time I need is, and they don't make that cutoff, we're done. I have to coach them up, though, to sprint with the intensity, because the only way my athletes are going to get faster is running faster. So if I force them into 7 reps today, they're not going to be able to get faster. They're to have a negative training effect on their speed. If we're beginning with freshmen in high school, sophomores, you're probably going to get 7 reps every single time. But as they get more efficient and work their way through this program, it's going to get less and less on the reps. All right, now we're going to week 2. We understand the runs, so I'm going to run by them. These are our progressions. We have squat. Every time we squat, 5 pounds. Ladies, 2.5. Press, we're going to add a total of 2.5 to the bar every single time. Deadlift, 10 pounds per week. Bench press, 2.5, and our power clean, 2.5 pounds to the bar every single week. This is a linear progression. I'm going to show you what we do when things start to get heavy, but I'm going to begin all of our novice athletes on a linear progression, and we're going to exhaust it to establish a base level of strength. All right, so you'll see deadlift on B. On Tuesday, we added 10 pounds. C, we get into 5. Bench press, 2.5, paired with that volume run, and cleans, 2.5. This is going to progress exactly like this, week 3, 4, 5, 6, until things start to get heavy, which I'll get to in a moment. Notice our primal Z. They all have an asterisk there. That is proficiency. If they are struggling with this movement and we're seeing different biomarkers for injury, I'm not going to progress them. Ideally, week 1, I'm going to start 3 sets on our step-ups, 3 sets of 5 right and 5 left. And they're going to get really good at that. If they were able to succeed, all right, then I'm going to get into next week, you've earned 3 reps right, 3 sets of 7 reps right, 7 reps left. If they struggle with that, there was some inefficiency, not responding to my coaching, something's going on there, week 3, they're going to stay at that 7. Fluid periodization. So week 4, if they were able to work through all of these, coach it up, then I'm going to add resistance, 5, 10 pounds. I'm not too worried about the implement. Even every ounce counts, and it's going to change the execution of this movement. Step-ups, especially the way we're demanding our athletes to execute them, are not an easy task. Very posterior chain dominance, and any biomarker for injury, you're not progressing on. Primal Y. Notice it says 3 sets of 10 yards, because I need the athletes to be moving through space. Our objective is athleticism. Our objective as they put on structure and new muscle, they're focusing on how to coordinate that and move through space. We're going to spend a lot more time on the field, the court, on one leg than 2. So this is our opportunity to start to connect the new structure and musculature that we create bilaterally, unilaterally. We can start with body weight, or we can find different ways to stress it, back rack, dumbbells on the side, dumbbells in the rack position. I'm not too concerned about it. Keep it interesting, because the straight-up linear progression is going to get boring. This is where you need to get involved and empower your athletes. All right, progressing through. So, progress. I have a little graph here. I'm used to whiteboard. I love the whiteboard in the weight room where I'm able to draw these graphs as I operate through. So our athlete, for this example, is to begin on his week 1 on the bottom left for you, 100 pounds. That's where we're starting our 3x5, and I'm only going to give the example of the squat here, but imagine all of these lifts progressing on this graph. So we are adding a total of 10 pounds to the week, 10 pounds to the bar every single week. 5 on Monday, day A, 5 on Thursday, day C, 10 pounds to the bar every single week. Theoretically, in 10 weeks, we're adding that weight. We're hitting those 3 sets of 5. 10 weeks, we're going to progress to 200. So about week 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you're going to see some things change because that bar is starting to get heavy. All right, a couple things is going to happen. Number 1, if they get 5, 5, 5, green means go, 15 reps. Next time they come in on that C day, they've progressed to 205. Or it's going to look like this. First set, it wasn't pretty, but they get 5 reps. You know something's going on with them. You communicate. You give them a little bit more rest time. Say, let the athletes you're paired with go through a couple cycles. And then I'm going to need you to attack this 5 with everything you've got. They give it everything they got, but they only successfully complete 4 reps. Okay, we're not done for the day. We're still going to fight. We're not going to give on this. We didn't get our green means go 15 reps, but I'm going to talk to that athlete, see what's going on, and we're going to fight for 4. I'm going to give him some coaching feedback, connection. Maybe he gets 4, maybe he gets 5. It doesn't matter at this point because he didn't get 15 reps. At this point, I'm going to perform what's called a reload. I'm going to give them another opportunity to attack this 200 pounds the next time we squat, that day C of week 10. It could be finals. Could be they had relationship ended. Something is going on. Maybe they skipped out on sleep to play Fortnite. Something. I don't know. But we're going to communicate with that athlete, 2 days of rest and recovery from that squat, and then we're going to give them another shot. If they get it, awesome. Green means go. 15, we're going to go to 205 on day A, week 11. If they don't get it, we're going to perform a reset. This is not based off percentages. Percentages don't work with this population. So we're going to take back 3 weeks of progressions. For our male athletes, 10 pounds a week, that's 30 pounds. We're going to perform a reset. The next time they squat, 30 pounds. Going back to day A, 200 pounds, week 10. If they just completely tank, they were not able to recover from the previous squat day where they set that 195 to earn that opportunity to hit 200. If they completely tank, it looks like 3 reps, 2 reps the next set, and hey, we're going for it still no matter what. Maybe they get 1, maybe they get 2 on that last opportunity. It's less than 13 reps. We're going to perform the reset the next day. So week 10, day C. So reload if they are over 13 reps. Green means go on 15, and reset if we're failed to get 13 reps. And that's across the board. 5s for a deadlift. If I don't get 5s, green doesn't mean go. We don't reload on our deadlifts. Squats the same, bench the same, power clean the same as well. Follow these guidelines, go pretty far. You will exhaust the program when you perform 3 total resets with your squat and 3 total resets with your deadlift. That's how I know you exhausted. Some athletes with squatty bodies like myself, I'm going to have 3 resets of my deadlift before my squat. Continue the same progress. Maybe I get 4 total deadlifts before I hit that 3 on my squat. Maybe I get 5. But I'm going for 3. Typical athlete approach is going to be 3 fails on your squat and your deadlift keeps going up. Imagine at that 200 point, that red circle I got going on, the deadlift continues to go up. So this is going to work in what we call an inherent periodization, where one lift I'm going for my 3x5 rep max. I'm fighting for it while my other lifts are down. Trust me when I say this, you're going to reset your vertical press a lot on this program. Doesn't matter. We're focused on the squat and the deadlifts where we can drive the most structural adaptation for our novice athletes. That's how we know they've exhausted the linear progression. This is about 20 weeks, 22 weeks, a semester of training. Then we know they're trusted. With a lot of our novice athletes, though, right, they come in at 13 years old as a freshman, then they go home for the summer, and then they come back the next semester. They're a different person. They put on 30 pounds, 3 inches, whatever it is, so I'm going to go back on this program because they are a different person. So with the high school level, it's the most anabolic time of their lives. We're going to take full advantage and really exhaust this because they are different every single time that they see you, whether it's one off season, whether it's one semester, however you're working with your athletes at that level. So why we chose our specific reps. So we're going to get into our SAID principle, and we break these down into reps. Notice our 1 to 3. All of these adaptations are going to be going on at the same time, but the one that's really going to pop out for you from the outside perspective as a coach, reps 1 to 3, we target our power cleans is going to be reaching for central nervous system efficiency, right? Power, jumps. Then our rep schemes of 4 to 7, we're targeting myofibrillar hypertrophy. So a structural, we're trying to increase the cross-sectional size of our athletes. Then we have 8 to 12 reps, think a bodybuilding scheme program, a fluid-based hypertrophy, not necessarily the functional tissue that we're going for to create power athletes, right? High horsepower, short duration. And then we have our endurance rep schemes. So we bias the 5s, the 4 to 7 rep range in there, and then we work our hypertrophy in there with our pull-ups. More often than not, we're going to create a bigger back rack that we can hold a bigger barbell. So we're not biased one versus the other, but for our novice athletes, we're sticking to those 5s because we found that's how they last longer on this linear progression. We've done 4s, we've done 6s, we've done 7s, but we did not exhaust. We did not wring those athletes out for everything that they had on those rep schemes. Next phase here is how we're able to take full advantage of this. So notice we have the novice window laid out on the graph. Novice window, this is where everything works. The first exposure to weight training for any athlete or any stress, everything works. Why do you think P90X has only worked 90 days? Because everything works for 90 days. Understanding that with the novice, we're going to take full advantage and put as much weight on our athletes as possible. The first 1 to 3 weeks, the thing you're going to see the most from the outside perspective as a coach is going to be intermuscular coordination. Going back to that biomechanical inefficiency. This is where muscle groups across joints start to learn about each other. It's those kids bench pressing for the first time and they get the shakes. Or the Bambi legs on the squat. They're trying to realize, oh, bicep and tricep, we can work together. Okay, so in 1 to 3 weeks, I can throw 30 pounds total on the back squat. Did they get 30 pounds stronger? No, they just got more coordinated. So I'm not going to wait for them to get intramuscular coordinated. Again, all these go on at the same time. I'm going to sneak as many ounces on that barbell as possible because I'm thinking long term. Then they start to work in the next phase, our intramuscular coordination. Think power. We got number encoding, we have rate encoding, pattern encoding. Athletes start to know their own strength. Take your power clean day. This may be the best day to see intramuscular coordination, where now my bar path is set, but the muscles can work on diving deeper into their motor units. Set 1 on my power clean. Doesn't look as good as it should, so I give my athletes directions. Do this, this, and then rep 2. What does it look like? All right, exactly the same as 1, but then when they get to that point, it fires up, goes well above their rack, their catch position, almost hits them in the forehead. And you're like, all right, oh my God, they finally got it. Then what's rep 3 look like? Okay, back to the drawing board, right? They don't know their own strength yet. They need more reps, more opportunity. And as they work 4 to 6 weeks in, we start to get to that 12-week, that 10-week point, they get more coordinated. They're putting on more musculature. So the next phase we're going to enter is going to be our hypertrophy phase. And if I'm a personal trainer in here, I'm going to look at this and say, all right, I'm going to give them a deal until we get to that hypertrophy phase. Then they're locked for life because they're going to start to see, especially your high school kids, little mosquito bites jump up on their arms and develop some structure or muscle. So we're going to get to the hypertrophy phase. We've exhausted all the motor units that they had. We've built more muscle because we're under stress, and our athletes start to change now. So that first reset, entering the hypertrophy phase, I'm going to introduce compensatory acceleration. Going back to our speed on the pyramid. In the world of sport, speed is king. Compensatory acceleration, Dr. Fred Hatfield. I perform that reset. My bar is 30 pounds lighter. My athlete has 10 weeks of reps underneath their belt. They're more coachable. I can start to talk about speed. Now I need you to move that bar as fast as you can. Send that bar to orbit. However you're able to communicate, we're going to start to develop speed in the squat rack. That's going to carry over to our sprints as well. So after that first reset, I don't want you to talk about speed. Talk about technique, set up the mental game, getting your mind right. But when they fail first, the bar's lighter, then you focus on coaching speed and you never lose it again. That is the focus. So we're going to see our 3 resets played out on the graph here. Really want you to focus on coaching speed after that first reset. And leading to stagnation. Again, accelerated adaptation, one of the driving principles for this program. Stagnation is when my athletes accommodate to this. They are unable to recover from day A squat on day C squat. They've exhausted their linear progression. They developed a more in tune central nervous system. When I see those fails, the bottom of 1, 2, and 3, I know my athlete is starting to get into a developed central nervous system, and I can maybe start to trust them with 1RMs because they've earned it. Those fails, right? What drives adaptation? Load, stress. We're finally stressing and loading the athlete enough to fail. and then drive these specific adaptations. Finally, touching real quick, the warm-up. This is an amazing opportunity to really teach your athletes. If you're not getting a lot of time with your athletes, maybe one weight room day a week, what do you have? You have the sport coach's practice warm-up. I can still accomplish those 4 novice athlete limiting factors. Biomechanical efficiency, making them more coordinated, and you can start to earn the trust with your athletes. More neurologically sound, they're jumping to the height that they think they're jumping. Then our primal proficiency, every single warm-up should include a squat, a step, and a lunge through all 3 planes of motion. And psychological, right? The old school approach where you are the thermometer, right? I want to see you active in the warm-up. You're establishing the cues that you're going to direct. Posture, foot position, retraction, protraction, whatever you're going to tell your athlete, it should be introduced in your warm-up. So when we are actually applying stress with the barbell or speed or conditioning, whatever, they know they have a connection for that feedback loop to go into effect, and they get more coachable. So in the warm-ups, I hate to see the sport coach come by, make the little jokes and get into your athlete's head. No, this is the time to focus so we can be turned on and accomplish more for the practice. Sir. So warm-up anatomy, what it looks like for us, we do a lot of motion. So a pre-warm-up warm-up could be shuffles, could be laps, whatever you want to do, just get them moving. Then we target isostability. We're going to establish a posture within which to challenge with dynamic warm-up. Dynamic warm-up, think of those as the lunges, the squats, but we're locked in for our posture. Finally, whatever energy system I'm targeting for the day, whether it's practice or the weight room, I'm going to give them a little taste, right? Get their chili hot, get them ready for that moment. And then the X factor. If I'm working practice or training warm-ups, I need to think, what is this athlete's limiting factor? The X factor for practice or training warm-ups is going to be long-term athletic development, long-term skill or position development. But when it comes X factor for testing or game day, whatever it takes to get them in the mindset that we're ready to go off that first kickoff, off that first whistle, as soon as the clock starts running. I don't want any athlete to fall asleep because we were not dialed in right off the clock. So X factor, it doesn't have to be that way in practice, long-term perspective. But on game day, that's that opportunity to save it and let it loose. So empower your performance. I began talking about transactional coaches, right? They were not looking to empower and invest and develop the potential that we knew we had. I encourage you to be a transformational coach, right? Every athlete will progress through these phases, some a little bit quicker than others. That's A-okay. But we need exposure. We need opportunity to master the X, the Y, and the Z through all 3 planes of motion so we can be put in a position for when any challenge faces us, we've already been exposed to that opportunity and we will not be embarrassed on the field. So coaches, think about biomechanical efficiency, neuromuscular efficiency, psychological factors, tensile strength, and have you establish your athlete's base level of strength? Have you put them in a position to empower them and take on any stress that they may face on the field or in real life when their game day is over? I don't want you to make them hate training, hate the weight room, hate the iron game, because there is so much to learn about yourself and establish a true self-esteem for you as a coach, for you as an athlete. Awesome. Thank you. Contact information, guys, email, phone, text, Instagram, based out of Austin, Texas, and I'll be hanging out and around for a little bit, guys. So if you have questions that we can't fit in this window, I'll be around.